Welcome to my review of The Soul of Flight by Brandon Sanderson, the newest book in the Cosmere. I know a lot of people were super excited for this book because it's supposed to offer like a new side of the Cosmere, and it certainly does, a whole new neighborhood, as it were. But there's also some weird things about this book that I think are going to shake up the status quo for the Cosmere going forward. As is typical for me, this review is going to be split up into two sections, a mostly spoiler-free review and then a very spoiler-filled review. And oh boy, I've got a lot to say about this one. Just a disclaimer before I begin, I read this book, I didn't listen to the audiobook, so if my pronunciation's a little weird, that's why. Also, I hear that Michael Kramer sounds a little weird in this one, in the audiobook, so I don't know, I'll have to report back when I listen to that. But anyway, this book's been out for a couple months. It released as part of the Words of Radiance leather-bound crowdfunding. I don't think it was a Kickstarter. So I'm glad I finally got my hands on it and finally read it so I can give you guys a review. So before I begin, let me give you a bit of a setup for this book. So this book takes place in a different neighborhood, different side of the Cosmere. Like if we consider Sel, Nalthis, and Roshar to be one side of the Cosmere where people are consistently world hopping in between these planets because they're relatively close in the cognitive realm, this is further out. In this neighborhood, we've got invention, valor, whimsy, and mercy. And they are kind of exerting influence on different planets and different peoples there. The book starts strong, dropping us right into the main conflict. We meet our protagonist, Velyomin, and he is an older gentleman. He's kind of grumpy but kind-hearted, and he's an inventor. After the initial setup and kind of the old world is established, Velyomin's life before the call to adventure in the hero's journey format, so to speak, a giant planet-sized spaceship, which is what the cover is, shows up and kind of upsets everything. So this ship is controlled by the Guild, a spacefaring civilization, an empire really, that exists in this side of the Cosmere. They show up and they give the people of the entire planet an ultimatum. Develop powered flight in 90 days or your civilization gets assimilated into the Guild. Basically conquered, right? Velyomin is an engineer and an inventor, so he gets pulled out of retirement by the king and kind of forced to develop powered flight in 90 days or everything he knows and loves will be destroyed. So that's a setup for the book. What did I think of it? Well, I thought it was pretty good. I really liked seeing a new side of the Cosmere, and the characters are pretty cool. I think there are some new elements introduced that could shape the space-age Cosmere in some interesting ways, especially setting up for conflicts in the future. As a story, Sanderson seems to really like a ticking clock. I mean, Wind and Truth, the ticking clock was 10 days to the Contest of Champions. The Sunlit Man, 10 hours per day, and then you die pretty much. This one has the 90-day ticking clock, so the entire story takes place in those 3 months. Although, come to think of it, I don't know what the months are like on Nibiru. So it could be more, it could be less. But regardless, 90 days is what they had. It's pretty typical for Sanderson. It starts off slower despite, the alien invasion. But it does pick up, and the Sanderlanche is fantastic. The end of the book was also a lot darker than I expected, but I will talk more about that in the spoiler section of this video. But yeah, overall, I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10 for standalone Cosmere. It's quite good. I like our two main heroes. It's 3 really, but the third one doesn't show up till Act 3 of the book, but she's great. But probably the coolest thing about the book is the setup for the Guild. Holy cow, these guys are crazy. And I'm excited to see them as the big bad for this side of the Cosmere more than a Shard. The planet itself is also pretty different from what we've seen Sanderson do with Cosmere worlds before. And like in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, we get a lore drop near the end of the book. Something that's not like super spoilery, like if you know that going in, the book won't be ruined for you, but it's still some helpful world building background. So I'll talk about that here. The planet Nibiru exists at the very edge of the habitable zone in the system, so it's really cold. That's why I came here as my backdrop, just FYI. The entire setting is blanketed in ice and snow, and all the civilizations in this book exist kind of around this small ocean at the equator that has mountains directly north and south of the ocean. So like liquid ocean, little stretch of land, and then mountains. This is Sanderson's ice world, kind of like his Hoth if Talbane is his Tatooine. The tech level is also interesting because it's space-age Cosmere technically, but because it's a different neighborhood, I don't know if it's like running concurrently to space-age for like Mistborn So I don't know. I mean, the Guild is a spacefaring civilization, so obviously it's space age. But the people of the planet Nibiru have like a Renaissance Europe level of technology, and frankly, a lot of their culture seems based off of like Italy. It's kind of like, what if Italy and the Mediterranean civilizations had to survive in the Arctic? Another fun little world-building quirk is that they don't really use the wheel for transportation. I know Sanderson has mentioned, or maybe it was Hoyd in one of the books, that there's an advanced civilization somewhere in the Cosmere that hasn't invented the wheel because they live in a jungle and it's just not practical. These guys have a concept of a wheel, like, you know, just a circle with spokes. They just don't use it for transportation because of the abundance of snow. Another fun little world-building quirk is the domesticated snow leopards. This was really cool to me, especially because I really liked the book, The Cry of the Ice Mark, when I was younger. So it sounds like there was a little bit of inspiration from that one. Basically, these snow leopards fill a hybrid niche of companionship and maybe like a small horse. They use them kind of like sled dogs. So that's pretty neat. Anyway, let me get on to the characters real quick. So our main character is Velyoman, and people call him Velo. Velo is a grumpy but kind-hearted old man, like 60-ish years old. He was a renowned inventor, and what's kind of funny is his most popular invention is like a toaster equivalent that's powered by this magic ore that they have. I'll talk about that more in a minute, because Eurosite is going to be really important in the Cosmere, I think. Anyway, Vel was kind of like the Da Vinci of his time, and he's recruited by the king to develop flight in 90 days. Comes back to the capital of Geronovia and goes to the university that he used to teach at. And there he assembles his team, and the king appoints his royal inventor. Okay, real quick, about the king. I don't remember his name. Let me look up the ebook real quick, because this is important. The king sucks, dude. Like, so the king sucks, not because he's like a horrible king, but because he has a monopoly on Eurosite. He controls the mines, and yeah, he's just not a good king, especially in this context. He should have been a lot more liberal with this stuff. Anyway, King Heoneth. He is not great. Velo's team consists of himself, Saragoni, Satiro, which is one of his former colleagues, another teacher at the university, the king's appointed engineer, who's basically, he's Thomas Edison. Like, he became rich and powerful because he invented one thing and was able to get enough money from that to hire people to invent things for him, and just he took credit for it. So there's him. What's his name? Barnino. That's his name. Another fun little character that I forgot to mention, Ceslo. You might recognize that name from Tress of the Emerald Sea. The sorceress has an AI on her ship called Ceslo, and I think that name, at least, originates from here. So that's a fun little Easter egg I think Sanderson sprinkled in earlier. That's our team. Ceslo's a lab tech. There's a couple of those, but they're not as important, you know? I can't mention the last person on the team without spoilers, so I think that's where my spoiler-free review section is going to end. If you don't want those spoilers, I guess just come back when you're done reading the book. Alright, the last member of the team is Boric, and she's amazing. Nibiru has two sapient races. It has humans, and then it has snow leopards, and I forgot their name too. Their clan has a very specific name. Now, these snow leopards are different from the domesticated ones. There are legends that they talk about earlier on in the book about kind of a pride of larger, more intelligent snow leopards that have been seen in the mountains. And what's funny is, like, in universe, people scoff at this idea because snow leopards are solitary creatures, and so, like, the concept of a pride of them is kind of silly. It's more so the concept that there's a pride of snow leopards that make people dismiss the legend, more so than the fact that they are giant and intelligent and communicate with their minds. But they're real. Exposure to Eurosite in the mountains where they live in the cave system has given them hyper-intelligence, and they're also able to connect mind to mind, and that's how they communicate. For a while, they've just stayed away from human civilizations, but once word got to them that the guild wants to assimilate and take over the entire planet, they had to intervene. So Boric, she's a snow leopard that wears spectacles, and she's so funny. She's this big snow leopard who just saunters into the lab in Act 3 after something horrible happens. It's after the lab explosion that triggered the avalanche that destroyed the village. Boric brings information about refined Eurosite, and that's how they're able to finally get their flying machine to work. But why do I like her so much? She is hilarious. She's basically got the mannerisms of a house cat, and she's just so funny. You can kind of think of the snow leopards like the Kandra, because they're another sapient race that derive from another creature that's not super intelligent after exposure to magic. So their entire society of these snow leopards live in these caves that have a higher concentration of Eurosite than normal. And I guess now is a good time to talk about Eurosite. So Eurosite is a new concept, and it pervades a lot of life on Nibiru. Basically, it is this ore that lets off a sort of investiture radiation, and it can be fashioned into bracelets and bracers that can grant specific abilities. Now, for that to happen, they have to be carved a certain way, they need the proper set of runes, and in some cases, they need a metal wire wrapped around them. Not quite like a lattice, like a fabrial, but they're definitely related. So far, we haven't seen Eurosite ore used to do a lot. Like, it's what they use for their heating devices, it's where they get some of their energy, and it's where they are able to get kind of a little bit of a strength boost. But it's nothing crazy, no huge bursts of power. However, refined Eurosite, on the other hand, is highly volatile. And that's what Boric brings them. She brings them the knowledge of how you refine Eurosite. What you have to do is you get a bunch of Eurosite in one place, and you heat it up. And it can be accelerated by carving the raw Eurosite with the proper runes, at which point it becomes dense and combines together into refined Eurosite. And this stuff is volatile. Like, it will seemingly go off for no reason. They have to figure out how to stabilize it before they're able to use it to power their flying ship. That's another interesting thing about this book. It's a commentary on how the guardrails and safety of research and society can get thrown away if there's a pervasive threat. Like Velium and Velo, he's very cautious, but once they only have like 10 days left, and he realizes they're not going to make it unless they throw off some guardrails, he's perfectly okay throwing some of his ethics out the window. But anyway, in this period where he throws some of his ethics out the window, a couple of lab techs die due to handling the refined Eurosite. And what's weird is it's described in a very specific way. It's described in a very specific way, and I think it would probably just be better to read it. Velo was surprised by how volatile refined Eurosite seemed to be. Even without the proper runes inscribed into it, occasionally it would just combust. Other times it would turn the surrounding utensils into gold, and others it would melt the wall next to it. Its range was seemingly random, and its effects whimsical. I think that wording is deliberate. I think the use of the word whimsy implies that at one point, whimsy invested the planet. Not a ton, but enough that this ore became invested. Why Whimsy did this, I'm not sure, but can we really know Whimsy's motivations? It is Whimsy, after all. Also, there's a fun little note before I move on. Boric mentions that due to the concentration of Eurosite, occasionally a perpendicularity will open up in their cavern. I don't think world hoppers use this perpendicularity very often because it's not consistent. It opens up randomly, kind of at the ebbs and flows of the Cosmere. And also, if a world hopper were to use this perpendicularity, they would literally be appearing in a den of lions. Snow leopards, but whatever. Okay, so let's talk about the ending and then invention, and then I think that's it for me. So I'm not gonna spoil too much of the ending. I know I'm in the spoiler section, so I totally could, but dude, they lose? Like, I was not ready for that. So after Port Faro, the other town on the other side of the sea gets obliterated by a laser from the ship. Apparently they were trying to get off-world help, which was expressly prohibited in the terms the guild set forth. But after that, the guild was getting ready to invade, and they are a force to be reckoned with. Once they use their untested flight machine to fly to the middle of the ocean where like the forward advance force for the guild is, like, hey, we did it. You should honor your bargain, which they obviously don't. The guild is there to conquer. They want the water resources, because, like, think about it. The entire planet is covered in ice, right? And if there's this giant spacefaring civilization that assimilates other cultures and takes the resources from those planets to build their planet-sized vessel, That's a steal, man. They're going to subjugate the people of Naviro to harvest the ice, but they're really there for the Eurosite. The reveal that they already sent people to start mining it was insane. And the fact that when Velo and Saragoni got there, the guild's like, okay, cool, good job, and then just takes them away, basically hemalurgic spike body modify them against their will, and forces them to watch as they do that to the rest of the civilization. That's dark, dude. I'm shocked Sanderson went there. Our heroes die, basically. They are under the control of the guild. So, like, these hemalurgic body modifications are weird. So I think Sanderson took some inspiration from the Borg with these guys. They seem to adjust the cognitive aspect of the individual to make them more pliable, to make them more docile to the orders of the guild. So they're just taken away, and this is done to them against their will, and we do get some Velo and Saragoni point of view when they see just everyone getting rounded up. And also, I don't know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this in the comment section down below if you've read the book already. But am I wrong in assuming that they have some wiggle room? Like, it seems to be that they're setting up the fact that Eurosite disrupts in some way the mechanisms that they're using to control people. So I think there's a chance that Velo and Saragoni can break free, and maybe, I don't know, they're kind of screwed. But the guild, man. Okay, so their entire ship, this reveal was insane. So their ship, their planet-sized ship, they call it the Vessel. And that's because it's a play on the idea of a shard, like a shardic vessel, right? These people, like Invention, what's his name? As Honor mentions in Wind and Truth, the Vessel of Invention, Chanko Sar, he built all sorts of wonders in the Cosmere. But then he wasn't able to, like, maintain contact with, like, Honor wasn't able to get a hold of him. And it seems that one of the peoples of the worlds that he visited and invested advanced so quickly that they were able to capture and bind their god. And they built the grand apparatus around him to control him, which, there it is, the grand apparatus. That's what's at the center of the guild ship, called the Vessel. So the Vessel of the Shard, Chanko Sar, has been captured and kind of forced to stay in one place and have his energy siphoned, powers the Vessel. That's so cool! And also at the end, we learned that the off-worlders that were trying to help the other town, those are Mercy's forces, not Valor. Like, we still don't know where Valor is, but we know she's in this neighborhood. When they were passing through one of the information centers, there was kind of a throwaway line about Whimsy and Valor being on other planets preparing their forces. So it seems like this side of the Cosmere is already politicking for war and space-age conflict. And, dude, the guild is just crazy. I'm shocked, man. Still am. That reveal at the end was just, it was so good. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. And what did you think of the book, The Soul of Flight? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, and what you think the future of this side of the Cosmere has in store. Do you think it's going to have a collision course with the neighborhood that we're familiar with, or it's going to be kept more separate? I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, thank you so much for watching. Have an excellent time of day. Catch you all next time. Bye.